Hello, it is Rasko of Rasko and Disco Beer Review, but today I'm doing some whiskey and I'm with...
Matt McKay from Dunphail and Bimber Distilleries.
Ooh, Bimber. So what's the deal with Bimber? Tell me a bit about that.
Sure, so Bimber is a London distillery making single malt whiskey, English single malt whiskey. We've been around since 2015, so we've got 6-year-old whiskey now. Making whiskey really very traditionally. So a lot of distilleries are trying to get as much done as possible, as much whiskey out there. We don't do that at all. We try to get the best whiskey possible. So a lot of our processes, they're really traditional, they're really old, direct fire, week-long ferments, things that you don't tend to see at a lot of distilleries.
Yep, okay. 2015, whiskey terms, that's relatively young.
Yeah, it's pretty new distillery, but whiskey has exploded over the last 20 years around the world. Japan, Europe, England as well. England's gone from having one distillery, now there are nearly 40. So we're young, but actually in the grand scheme of English whiskey, we're one of the sort of early runners.
Well, fair enough. That's good to know. It's something different from me, at least. Well, I've always been a whiskey fan, but I never know how to taste whiskey or what to look for and what's the deal with it. I just tend to look there and tend to look good with a glass. But that's it. That's what I do. I ponce around a bit. So, educate me. How do I taste this? Is there a different way to taste beer?
Sure. The way to drink whiskey is the way that feels comfortable to you. You're going to find tons of people, tons of websites that say, this is how it should be done. No ice, 1 drop of water only.
Yeah.
That's all bullshit. You should drink any beverage the way that you enjoy it.
Yeah.
The way that I enjoy it, and it is a common way, is in a nosing glass. This is one example. This is called a Glencairn, but there's loads of different ones. Straight up, but equally if you want to add some water, that's absolutely fine. What I would recommend though is simply appreciating, in the same way you probably would with beer. You appreciate the nose, see what you think, going for another go. There's quite a lot of body and texture in whiskey because of the higher ABV.
Yeah.
Boom. Just keep it in your mouth. So you're going to get a lot of the flavour through your nose, olfactory and retrofactory. Yeah. But keep it in your mouth, take all of that flavour, swallow, enjoy. If it's too strong for you, add some water. I refer back to my previous statement, which I stand by, which is you enjoy it as you want it. I am not here to tell you how to enjoy any type of drink.
Fair enough.
I'll tell you what I enjoy about it, how it's made, what I think about it. But it's your body, it's your mouth, it's your beverage.
Cool, that's great. Right. All right, so you're working with Bimber and you're working with another distillery up in Scotland, right? And what's that about? They've got a new site opening up. I've seen your Facebook videos, very nice.
Thank you.
All right, and someone working construction, that's not a bad site you're on.
Yeah, so I have 2 roles. One with Bimber in London, making English whiskey. Yeah. We're building a second distillery. It's not Bimber, it's called Dunphail. It's up in Speyside, which is a high concentration of whiskey distilleries. It's taking some of the lessons from Bimber. So again, those long ferments, direct fire on the still, rich fat spirit. But we're building a malting facility on site. Nice. A lot of distilleries, they buy in their malt. It's already processed. They spec it. They say we want it like this. This is what we want. We are making whiskey the way it used to be made about 100 years ago. We bring the barley in raw. We ferment it, we germinate it on the floors, we cease the germination through kilning, we add peat where necessary, and so we finally control the spec of that malt on site, and then we distill it. Right. It's pretty exciting. The build is 3 months ahead of schedule.
Nice.
And it helps when you're building it ourselves. We're not relying on other people. We're literally building it ourselves, and we should be open and distilling by the end of the year. So pretty exciting.
That is good.
It's bigger than Bimber. Bimber is a very small distillery. It makes 5,000 litres of pure alcohol a year. In real money terms, that's a barrel a day. Dunphail is bigger, 4 barrels a day.
Oh, right.
Which, it still doesn't seem big. And when you compare it to a lot of Scotch distilleries, the sort of likes of Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, they're filling 100 barrels a day. They're absolutely enormous operations. But we're doing a different thing. We are not looking to make whiskey that you're going to find in your supermarket that's just sort of filler. We are making what we think is the best single malt we can for an audience that are looking specifically for that. So it's pretty niche. But yeah, Dunphail, 4 times as big as Bimber. It gives us a little scope to play around with things.
Thank you. This is becoming the easiest interview ever for me, from my perspective, mate. So, all right, novice perspective.
Yep.
You're doing it the way you did it 100 years ago. You said.
Yep. Pretty much.
Why did that stop?
It stopped because of the difficulty between quality and yield, quantity and quality.
Right.
So for instance, let's talk about just fermentation. So we ferment for 7 days.
Yeah.
4 of those are on the yeast. Yeast comes and it goes, but what we're doing, and it's kind of similar to brewing, you're leaving it.
Yeah.
And our washbacks, our fermenters are open topped, so we get a secondary malolactic fermentation. It just simply makes a better quality of, you guys would call it wort, at that point we call it wash.
Yeah.
And we firmly believe that distilling just reinforces those flavours.
Fair enough.
So that takes a long time. But equally, if you want to make more whiskey, you cut that down.
Right.
And so distilleries over the last 100 years, and particularly in the sort of last 30 years, single malt has only really existed as a category since the 70s. Previously it was all blend. All whiskey was blended. Single malt is a relatively modern invention.
Right.
It really is. And demand of it has just grown and grown, and the internet's come along, and now everyone's into it. So you need to churn it, you need to make more.
Yeah.
And in our view, that has resulted in distilleries cutting corners, trying to make things as quick and as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
And I get that, efficiency is a good thing.
Yeah, of course.
Business, operational zen.
You're not working for free in the end.
Yeah, make the most of it. We don't do that at all. It's fundamentally against our value. And that's not to knock down other people who do it. It's just that it's not how we want to make whiskey. We want to make the best whiskey we can, and we believe that takes time. But yeah, the reason why other people are doing it differently is that push for yield, to make more, to save demand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. All right. Jim, our now researcher, former cameraman, had some questions. He asked about Scottish water. What is it about Scottish water that makes such a good whiskey?
Absolutely nothing.
Really?
Water is, in my opinion, the biggest misnomer, the biggest myth and romance in whiskey making. A lot of distilleries are trading on historic stories around it's our purest water, it's our waterfalls. It's just bullshit. It really is. It really is. So I'll say here and now, in London, we are distilling using tap water. It's Thames water. If you look on our website, on the blog, I've put up our Thames water report. You're free to look at that. And the reason why we quite happily state that is because you can't just take water from a stream and stick it into a distillery. It has to be processed, it has to be demineralized, dechemicalized, it has to be fit for use.
Right.
So whether you get that from the tap or from this beautiful stream and waterfall is largely irrelevant. It's just such a myth that people say the reason why whiskey is good is this mystical thing. It's just not true. It's just not true.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question is Japan. Japan has boomed in whiskey in recent years.
For sure.
Why is it, have they boomed, and what is it about Japanese whiskey that is unique from, well, the rest of the world?
The second question is excellent. So Japanese whiskey has been around for a long time. It kicked off in 1923.
Yeah.
Guy came, without giving you the whole history, Guy came over, spent some time at Ben Nevis Distillery, learned how the Scotch made whiskey, brought it back to Japan. Japan's been making whiskey for nearly 100 years. But for a lot of that, some of it, the quality hasn't been very good, and mainly people just haven't known about it. So Japan has been making excellent whiskey, I would say, since the 60s and 70s. No one has known about it at all. So some of the bottles that people are now wetting their pants about, those were on the shelves gathering dust. No one was interested. And what happened was sort of about 15, 18 years ago, one of the Japanese whiskies won a major industry award. And that's sort of, wow, what's this? And it got people trying it. Wow, these whiskies are really, really good. And then another one won an award. And then another one. And then there was a Yamazaki sherry cask. It won world's best whiskey, which of course is a judgment call, but it gets attention to the point where Japan has now a major problem in that it has this hype around Japanese whiskey. All of the aged stock has been drunk. It's all gone. So all of these distilleries, what they were making before, they've had to sort of bring it all back in. And either the allocations of that whiskey are really tight, like where you could previously, as a shop, send me 10 cases. They'd be like, will send you a case maximum, or they just simply don't make that age statement whiskey. So they are suffering at the minute from success. What makes the flavour? It's very interesting. It's a personal thing, but a lot of Japanese whiskey, it's made the Scottish way.
Oh.
Those techniques, pot stills, very precise, still in oak. There are some countries where they're playing around with different still combinations, different casks that aren't necessarily. No, Japan makes whiskey very much in the Scottish way. Right. In the same way that a lot of English whiskey, not all of it, but a lot of it follows that route. But Japan brings a level of, I would say, sort of precision, sort of and passion to it. It sort of, I don't want to say it sort of makes it Japanesey, but it does. If you look at how the distilleries are formulated, there's just a massive amount of concentration on structure, on process, on repetition. So in some ways, I find some Japanese whiskies a little bit engineered. Yeah. But the quality of them, by and large, is very, very good. A lot of people try to get into Japanese whiskey because they feel that Scotch is heavy, robust, it's too much for them. And they find that some of the Japanese whiskies are lighter, more blossomy and easy, and that's true. But equally, Japan still makes some big, robust whiskies. Yoichi, Hakushu, big peaty flavours. And there's this image that Japanese whiskies are somehow lighter. And I would say that's probably not true. It's just possibly that those are the ones that people have tried. They've tried the Yamazaki, they've tried the Grain, the Cheetah, they've tried Jikyo, easy going. But if you dig deeper into it, there's a lot of robustness there. The problem is now that digging deeper, you're going to have to dig deep in your pockets. There are bottles in this bar that I paid £60 for, and now people want £500 for it. So I don't buy any more Japanese whiskey. It's priced me out of the market entirely.
Oh boy! Oh, there you go.
Get into English whiskey. It's young, it's new, it's exciting. And then when you win the lottery, Japanese whiskey, that's the thing to do.
There you go. Well, thank you very much for that. You've got a can of beer right here, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Brew by numbers, not to be confused by anything else. If you watched my last video, it's an Imperial Stout by your whiskey company Bimber at 11%. Now, if you look at the characteristics on that, it is an Imperial Stout. Now, Matt, this is something you worked on yourself? Or?
Yeah. So this was happenstance. I was in the Brew by Numbers tap room.
64, by the way.
Number 64 Imperial Stout. I was in the Brew by Numbers tap room with my friend Danny. We were just drinking beer. And
as you do
in the tap room. And a dude sits next to me and he's got a baby in a baby grow branded with the BBNO logo. And he's like, do you mind if we do some promo shoots and pictures? I was like, no, just drinking a beer. And whilst they were doing that, we're chatting. And he's like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I work in the whiskey industry. Yeah. He's like, well, I'm the owner. I'm Tom. I'm the owner and founder of Brew by Numbers. And we just got chatting. And there was this, because whiskey, because whiskey, at some point, it's basically unhopped beer. Yeah. Up until the point you're distilling it, what have we done? We have made unhopped beer. Those processes are, by and large, the same. And brewers and distillers, they have a lot in common. Yeah. And so Tom and I found this. We both love whiskey, we both love beer, we just work in different industries. And so what we did was we agreed to work together, to collaborate. So Tom produced a big roughy tufty Imperial Stout, the same recipe that they always do at BBNO. Yeah. We sent them over 6 barrels that we previously used to make Bimber, which were empty. He matured the Imperial Stout to make this barrel age. Yeah. That's all it is. It's just the base recipe. There's no adjuncts in this at all. Ooh. And then once he'd done that, and I think it was in cask for roughly 6 months, we emptied it out, we took it back, and then we put our whiskey back into it to then re-influence the whiskey with the Imperial Stout flavours. We've got some of that coming down the line, but the first one that we released, there was only 1 barrel of it. And Bimber is pretty hard to get hold of, and I didn't want everybody going, Matt, how can I get hold of it? So I actually sold this barrel to one of my friends, Angus, who runs a bottling arm called Whisky Sponge. And he twisted my arm and said, Matt, if you sell me this barrel to put out, I'll put you on the label. And so he's got me on the label here. I think the expression is a beer khaki because I'm showering in the Imperial Stout. Been disgusting. So yes, this is just a 4-year-old Bimber, 4-year-old English whiskey, which has been matured in the first fill ex-bourbon barrel, and then it was finished in these BBNO Imperial Stout casks. And yeah, it's just really, really interesting, a fun project to work on. We love working with BB&O. We love our collaborations with breweries, and we're doing more. We're going to lay down some porter, and we're working some porter. There'll be some Bimber finished porter, and then some porter finished Bimby. That's coming. And we're also doing. I'm a bit nervous about it, but we'll see how it goes. We're doing some barley wine.
Oh! I'll do a review of it in 5 years.
It'll be quicker than 5 years. The whiskey will take a bit of time, but yeah, well, I'll happily bring you some, and then you can tell me what you think.
I was going to rage you, but hey, here we go.
There you go.
Matt, thank you very much for giving me the easiest interview I've ever had.
You're absolutely welcome.
I've learned so much on this. Check them out. I'm Rasko of the Rasko and Disco Beer Review. Adios, bye-bye, like and subscribe.